everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another playoff preview video here to discuss. We're less than 2 months away from the playoffs, and we're taking a look at the standings as of the Four Nations break and who I would have at this point going to the Stanley Cup Final. With all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all your support. We never do it without you guys. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. And don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your guys' opinion on all this down in the comment section below. So in today's video, we got another interesting video here. We got a playoff preview here to discuss. We're less than 2 months away from the playoffs. It's going to be really interesting playoffs this year. There has been a couple of changes since we last did this playoff preview last month. There has been a few changes into the lineup scenarios and things like that, but we'll look at the standings here to start and tell you guys who would play who as of the standings as of the Four Nations break. So in the Eastern Conference, the top three in the Metro Division would be points percentage 727 Washington, who would be a President's Trophy champions. Carolina, who's 625 points percentage, and New Jersey, who's a 596 points percentage, would be the top three teams in the Metro. Top three teams in the Atlantic would be 623 points percentage Florida, 618 points percentage Toronto, and 600 points percentage Tampa. The two wildcard teams would be 555 points percentage Detroit and 554 points percentage Ottawa. So a lot of change-ups from what we had in the last playoff preview in the Eastern Conference. Carolina and Jersey is the only matchup that stayed the same, but as of right now, you'd also have Ottawa going to Washington, you'd have Detroit going to Florida, and you'd have a rematch of a couple of years ago where you have Tampa going to Toronto. So some interesting series in the East. In the Western Conference, you'd have 723 points percentage Winnipeg win the West, followed by 655 points percentage Dallas and 625 points percentage Minnesota. 655 points percentage Edmonton would win the Pacific Division, followed by 643 points percentage Vegas and 613 points percentage Los Angeles. Then you have the two wildcard teams would be 596 points percentage Colorado and 573 points percentage Vancouver. So not too much stuff different here, but there are a couple of playoff matchups that are different. The only one once again that stays the same in the Western Conference is Dallas, Minnesota. This time we'd have Winnipeg take on Vancouver, you'd have Colorado take on Edmonton in the first round, and you'd have Vegas taking on Los Angeles. So those would be some highly entertaining first round matchups. So let's start over in the Eastern Conference. I'll give you who I have currently going to the Stanley Cup Final as the standings sit right now. So in the first round, let's go over to the Atlantic Division. You have the Florida Panthers taking on the Detroit Red Wings, the defending Cup champs against the Red Wings team that surged under new head coach Todd McLellan. So this will be an interesting series. I think both teams have pretty good offenses. I think the Panthers do have more firepower. The Red Wings may have a tiny bit more depth, but I think they stack up pretty well offensively. Defensively, even though they're not the strongest of D-cores, I think the Panthers would have the stronger D-core. And I think goaltending-wise, Florida by far is the better team. Like I think Bobrovsky and Knight are miles ahead of Talbot and Lyon. So I think at this point, it's good to see that Detroit will actually make the playoffs and their playoff drought. That would be a good thing for Detroit fans. I would personally love to see Detroit back in the playoffs. I just don't see them going very far. That goaltending and defense is atrocious, and unless they fix something up before a trade deadline, I really don't see them going very far in this series. I think it will be Florida in 5. Even though Florida is not the strongest of team and definitely not as strong as they were last year, I definitely do see them as being able to really cruise past the Detroit Red Wings. So it'll be a short series in my opinion, and I think the difference on goaltending and defense really just put Florida into the second round. So I have Florida being Detroit in 5. The other Atlantic Division series would be Toronto and Tampa Bay. That would be an interesting series. We saw Toronto win a couple of years ago, their first and only first round win in like what, 20, 21 years. So Toronto knows what it takes to beat Tampa. Tampa's still a really good team. They could pull off the upset here. I mean, forward wise, I think Tampa has probably a little bit more firepower up front, but both teams have extremely talented forward groups. I think Toronto might have more deeper forward group. Defensively, both teams have pretty good defenses. I'll probably give the slight edge to Toronto right now, just because of their offseason additions and how well they played this year. Goaltending wise, I think you have to give it to Vasilevsky, given the fact he's one of the best goaltenders in the world. But Wall and Stellaris have both been doing quite fantastically this year. So this will be an interesting series, but sort of like I predicted last time when we had Florida versus Tampa, I'm still going to pick against Tampa. I think Toronto's probably the more complete team at this point, and even though Tampa probably has the better goaltending, I do think Toronto will be able to get by them relatively easily. I say 6 games, just like they did a couple of years ago when they won that first round series against Tampa. So that would set up as another second round matchup between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Going over to the Metro Division side, we have an interesting matchup between one of my favorite teams, the Ottawa Senators, and the President's Trophy winning Washington Capitals. Now, after what I've seen from some of the players at the Four Nations, I think this would be a long and interesting series. Like offensively, they stack up pretty well against each other. I might give Ottawa the slight edge offensively, given the fact that they're a little bit younger, but I think both teams actually have really good top sixes, really good forward groups, and really good depth. Defensively, I might give the slight edge to Washington because I think they have a little bit more of a complete defense, but both teams actually have really good defenses. And in that, it'd be a really hard tie. I mean, Thompson's had a really good season this year, but Allmark won a Vezina a couple of years ago. So I think if Allmark was healthy, maybe a slight edge to Ottawa, but I mean, these two teams would actually stack up really well against each other. So this is why I'm actually predicting in this series to have the Ottawa Senators upset in 7 games. It'll be like a game 7, like a 1-goal game, or a game that finishes in overtime. But I think Ottawa would have just enough firepower to sneak by the President's Trophy Capitals. Once again, President's Trophy team out in the first round. Something I think that'll wind up happening again this year. President's Trophy team doesn't go too far usually, but still, I think Ottawa has what it takes. I think they're built for the playoffs, and I think they would be able to upset and move on to round 2. And the last playoff series in the Eastern Conference will be Jersey, Carolina. Now, the last time I did this playoff series between these two teams, Carolina did not have Mikko Rantanen, so I think offensively, these two teams stack up pretty well against each other. I do still think that Jersey has a little bit more depth. However, I do think the Rantanen addition does improve the Hurricanes. Defensively, like, man, these two teams have extremely talented defenses. I mean, probably both of them have top 10 D cores in the league, maybe even top 5, but I would say maybe the slight edge to New Jersey because they're a little bit younger, and in net, complete edge to the New Jersey Devils. I mean, if they have Markstrom in net, he's way better than Anderson or Kochetkov, so due to the fact of the goaltending, plus I think they have the slight better offense and defense, I would take the New Jersey Devils in a 6-game series. I do think it will be longer than last time's series, when I said Jersey would win in 5, but I do think Jersey would wind up taking this series, and the young upstart Devils will advance the second round to face the Ottawa Senators. Going over to the Western Conference side, so you have the Winnipeg Jets taking on the Vancouver Canucks. This will be another intriguing series. Offensively, I do think top to bottom, Jets have the way better offense. And I do think the Canucks have taken a little bit of a step back from last year's offense, but still, they have a pretty decent offense, even though I do give the edge to Winnipeg. Defensively, I think at this point in time, if Quinn Hughes was healthy, I think the Canucks would probably have the slight edge defensively. I do think they have a little more of a depth on the blue line than the Jets do, but it's only slightly. If the Jets made an addition before the trade deadline, I think the Jets could easily have the top defense in this series again. And in that, Hellebuyck, best goalie in the world right now, on his road to a 2nd straight Vezina. I think Hellebuyck is a lot better goaltender than Demko is right now, so I would say that the Jets have the better goaltender than the Canucks. So this will be an interesting series. I do think that the Jets have the advantage. They also have the home ice advantage. They won the Western Conference in this simulation, so I think with all of that in mind, I do think that Jets will take it, but I think it'll be in a 7-game series. I think it'll be a close, interesting, tightly contested game, but I do think that the Jets will wind up pulling away with the series. I know Canucks fans wouldn't like to hear that, but I think the Jets at this point are too much of a powerhouse to be stopped, and I do think the Canucks will take them the distance, just like the Canucks did with the Oilers last year, but I just don't think they have enough firepower to take down the behemoth that is the Winnipeg Jets this year. Then you have the 2nd and 3rd place matchup in the Central with Minnesota taking on the Dallas Stars. That's an interesting series. We talked about this in our last one. Offensively, I think these two teams stack up pretty well. Dallas has added Mikael Granlund since our last one, so if they were completely healthy, I would say maybe Dallas has the edge, but with Taylor Seguin most likely going to be out for the first round of the playoffs too, I think maybe Minnesota has the edge. I mean, it'd be really close. Defensively, I do still think Minnesota has the edge, even though Dallas has acquired Cody Ceci. And in net, I do think Dallas does have the slight edge given the fact they have Jake Onger. So I do think this will be a really tight series. I think both teams are really good goaltenders. Minnesota's rather better decor. Offensively, they stack up pretty well against each other. It'll be a longer series, but I do think once again Minnesota will win in 6. I think the Wild do have what it takes right now. I think if Kaprizov's healthy come the playoffs, he'll be a lethal force to be working with, and I think this will be a really interesting series, but I do think Minnesota will wind up taking it in 6. Going over to the Pacific Division, you have the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Colorado Avalanche. You guys tell me that is not a first round series you guys would love to see. McDavid against McKinnon. That would be an awesome first round matchup. For the Oilers, I think they would have top to bottom probably the better forward group, although I do think the Avalanche might have a little bit of a better depth. Defensively, I do think that the Avalanche have the all-around better defense than the Oilers do, and in net with the way they're playing right now, I do think Mackenzie Blackwood would be the advantage in the series over Stuart Skinner. It'll be a really entertaining, long 7-game series, hard fought. I think this could be where we see some high-scoring games, but I do think in this series, the wild card Colorado Avalanche would upset the Edmonton Oilers and take the first round series in 7 games. I do think that the Avalanche would have enough firepower to propel themselves to the second round. I do think it would be an interesting series. I wouldn't be overly surprised if the Oilers pulled themselves away and took that series either, but I just think at this point in time that the Avalanche would be able to slightly muster a win over the Edmonton Oilers. And the last series we have here is Vegas versus Los Angeles. Now, I think these two teams stack up pretty well against each other offensively. I would give the slight edge to Los Angeles because I do think they have top to bottom the better forward group right now. Once again, if the Knights acquire someone in the trade deadline, that could change, but I do think that the Kings have the better forward group. Defensively, I think Vegas by far has the way better decor, given how much of depth they have on that defensive side, and that's a real toss-up. I'll give the slight edge to Vegas, given the fact that Aiden Hill recently won a Stanley Cup, but Kemper has not looked overly bad, and I think it would be interchangeable, and Kemper might be the X factor in this series. So it'll be an interesting series. I think it'll be a close series. Once again, another rather longer series than this one. But I do think that will be the Knights pulling away in 6 games. I think that defense, that goaltending will be able to shut down the Kings' offense. And they have enough firepower on their offensive side to get goals when they need to. Plus, they also have some pretty decent depth. So all in all, I do think it'll be the Knights in 6 games advancing to the second round. So those will be the first round matchups. The second round matchups would be Vegas versus Colorado, Winnipeg versus Minnesota, Jersey versus Ottawa, and Florida versus Toronto. So Florida, Toronto, pretty good teams, stack up pretty well. Offensively, I do think Toronto has the edge. Defensively, top to bottom right now, I would also give the edge to Toronto. And in net, I think Bobrovsky's still better of a goaltender than Woll. So it'll be an interesting series. These two teams fought in the second round, I think it was 2 years ago, when Florida wound up taking it in 5. It was a real easy series for the Florida Panthers. Well, I think it's going to be a little bit different this time. I'm going to say it's Toronto in 6. I think the Maple Leafs are going to get that massive win that they need, and I do think that they'll be able to finally make it back to a conference final for the first time in an extremely long period of time. I just think Florida lacks a little bit of depth right now. Once again, if they add some pieces before trade deadline, this could change, but I think at this point in time, Toronto is the more complete team. I think Woll's able to get them some solid goaltending, and I do think they advance to the conference final. The other East second round matchup will be the New Jersey Devils and the Ottawa Senators. This will be another intriguing matchup. Offensively, both stack up pretty well against each other. I do think Jersey might have a little bit more depth, but both teams are really young and have some really exciting talent in their top 6. Defensively, I would give the edge to New Jersey because I do think that the Devils are a pretty dang good defensive team, even though Ottawa does have a pretty good blue line themselves. And in net, I would give Ottawa the slight edge, given the fact Linus Ullmark I think is a slight bit better right now than Jacob Markstrom is. But still, this will be another intriguing series, another tightly contested one. But I do think it will take all out of Ottawa to beat the President's Trophy winning Washington Capitals. And I think Jersey will actually quite handedly beat the Ottawa Senators in 5 games. I think Jersey is just on another level at this point in time, and they would wind up taking down Ottawa Senators team who had to do everything they could to try and beat the Washington Capitals. So I think it'll be an interesting series, but I do think Jersey will advance to the conference final. In the Minnesota-Winnipeg series, similar to what I said last time, offensively, Jets have the better top-to-bottom forward group. Defensively, I'll give the Wild the edge on the defensive side once again. In net, Hellebuyck, best goalie in the NHL right now. I'll have him the X factor for the Jets. So all in all, better top to bottom offense, better goaltending. I do think the Wild can hang with the Winnipeg Jets. I just don't think that the Wild can beat the Winnipeg Jets. So I would say the Winnipeg Jets win this series in 6 games. I don't think it'll take an overly long period of time, but I do think that Jets will be able to sneak by the Wild and advance to the conference final. And that would leave the last second round matchup between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. This will be an interesting series. It was a first round matchup when I last did this, and I do think some things have changed. The Avalanche, I do think, will probably have the better firepower offensively. I do think, however, Vegas might have the slight better depth and more complete forward group. Defensively, I do think Vegas would have the better defense, and in net, I might give the slight edge to Blackwood and Colorado. So I think it will be a really tight series, really entertaining series, but I think the Knights would come away in 7. I think it would take everything out of Colorado to take down McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. So I think they'll be out of gas when it comes to the second round, and with Vegas having a more easy series when it comes to taking out of the first round with taking down Los Angeles, I do think that Colorado would be out of gas and would be a little bit of an easier series. It will still be a long, hard-fought 7-game series, but I do think Vegas will be able to sneak away with the victory. So lots of intriguing things in the second round. That would lead to the Final Four being Jersey, Toronto in the East and Winnipeg, Vegas in the West. So those will be some interesting conference finals. In the East, you have Jersey and Toronto. This will be an interesting conference final. Both these teams have not been to a conference final in a long period of time. So to see both these guys get to the conference final will be beautiful. For Jersey, I do think they would have the edge offensively. Top to bottom, I do think they have the better forward group. Defensively, I do think Jersey also has the better defense. And in net, I do think Woll is a slight bit worse than Markstrom, so I will give the edge in net to Jersey. Like I said, these two teams stack up really well against each other. And like I said, if there's some trades that happen before a trade deadline, there's a possibility I could see Toronto wind up being the superior team in this series. But as it is right now, I do think Jersey's the better team. I would take them in a 7-game series. Once again, Toronto just cannot win in Game 7s. I think if any of those first 2 series also go to 7, I think Toronto is in a really bad spot. But still, I do think they're able to get it done in the first 2 series, but they aren't able to get it done in the third round. And I do think that Jersey is able to, with their youth, take down the Toronto Maple Leafs in 7 games. When it comes to the Western Conference side, you have Vegas versus Winnipeg. That'll be an interesting series, a rematch of the 2018 Conference Championship game. Offensively, top to bottom, Winnipeg does have the better forward group. Defensively, it is Vegas who has the way better defense. And in net, once again, Hellebuyck, best goalie in the NHL. He's definitely the better goaltender than Adin Hill. So I think this will be an interesting series. It will be another longer series, but I do think that the Jets will take down Vegas Golden Knights in 6 games. I think that Vegas, having to go through Colorado, it will take a lot out of them, and I do think the Jets have the easier path to the conference final than Vegas does. So that's why I say that the Winnipeg Jets will wind up taking them down in 6 games. Like I said, this will be an interesting series, but I do think that the Western Conference champs will be able to take down the former Stanley Cup champs, and that will lead to a Winnipeg Jets New Jersey Devils Stanley Cup final. Offensively, I think that top to bottom, the Jets have the better forward group. Defensively, Devils are a lot better, have a lot more complete defense, and in net, I do think that Hellebuyck's a better goaltender than Markstrom is. So I think these two teams will stack up really well against each other. I think it will be a longer series, but I say that the Jets in 6 games will wind up taking down the New Jersey Devils. I think it will be a longer series. I think it will be an interesting series, but I do think that the Jets at this point in time would win the Western Conference, would win the Western Conference in the playoffs, and would capture their first ever Stanley Cup and bring the cup back to Canada. So definitely, that's my current playoff predictions at this point in time. I would think that the Winnipeg Jets will beat the New Jersey Devils in a Stanley Cup final. So definitely, after your thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Do you agree with any of my picks? Do you disagree? Do you think Edmonton could beat Colorado? Do you think Los Angeles could beat Vegas? Do you think Washington beats Ottawa? Do you think Carolina winds up beating New Jersey? Do you think there's a couple of other ones that could happen that I didn't predict? Definitely, take your thoughts on all of that. And at this point in time, as of the 4 Nations break, who do you think will wind up winning with the playoffs as it sits right now? Definitely take your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. To like this video, if you're to subscribe down below. Thank you for your support and notice of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. This thing I was discussed in today's video. I also have a blog to make news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So I'm going to check that out. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe. We're on the road to 500 subscribers. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. And can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.